Hey guys, today we're going to go over basic framing of our Flex series. We're going to go over how to properly install your floor and ceiling track as well as your vertical and horizontal studs. In this video, we're just going to do a wall-to-wall installation. We'll do a separate video on how to properly frame door openings. And so we'll go ahead and get started on this situation. Prior to getting started, I wanted to go over a couple of the main framing components we're going to be using. The first is our Flex track. The flex track is going to be used as both your floor and ceiling track. Um, the second piece we're going to look at is our flex stud. The flex studs are going to be used both vertically and horizontally for these three situations. And the last part is going to be our flex L bracket. The L bracket's used to connect the track to the studs, also connects the vertical to horizontal studs. All right, so we're always going to start with our flex track on the ceiling first. We're going to measure from wall to wall, or if there's any square posts, we're going to be measuring from the wall to the post, or possibly post to post. The square posts are always going to be running floor to ceiling, which is why we're going to butt into those posts. There is one other situation that we'll discuss in another video. It's going to be a full height sliding door. So if you have that situation, you're not going to be using a flex track on the ceiling. However, we'll go over that in that video. So we'll go ahead and measure our flex track. The goal here is to get the track as tight as possible to each end of the wall. So we're going to go ahead, we have our measurement, we're going to get our ceiling track cut. All right, so prior to attaching your flex track to the ceiling, you want to make sure you put your L brackets in the track. The way you're going to know how many L brackets you need, you can look at your drawing. You're going to need one L bracket in the ceiling track per vertical stud. So we'll go ahead and slide in our L brackets. Okay, with the L brackets installed, we can go ahead and get our ceiling track installed. In this case, I'm going to be using just a 1.25" self-tapping screw to go into this soffit. If you have a ceiling grid, you can use a self-tapping screw, or you can use a caddy clip. It's just kind of the preference of the installer or possibly your dealer who would want you to use a specific type of attaching hardware. Attaching hardware is not something that we are going to supply. We only supply the internal attaching hardware for our system. So we're going to go ahead and get our ceiling track put up. All right, so when you're attaching, you're going to want to run that screw right through the center of the track. There's a small groove in the center of this track that you're going to want to hit with your screws. Make sure you're lined up with whatever your ceiling layout is, and we'll run our screw. Okay, so I'll run one screw every 4 to 6 feet. We're non-structural walls, so you don't need that structural support. So you're going to go down the line every about, like I said, 4 to 6 feet and attach your ceiling track. Okay, with our ceiling track installed, we can now measure for our floor track. The same concept is going to apply here. We're going wall to wall, so we're going to take the measurement from the wall to wall. If it's wall to post, or if it's post to post, it's going to span across the entire floor here. If you have a door frame, that's going to be framed slightly different. So we're going to cover that later on in this video. But we'll go ahead and take our measurement for the floor track. Okay, when getting ready to install the floor track, we're again want to slide our L brackets in first. Something I like to do is keep the leg portion that slides into the flex track in the same directions as one of the ceiling track. This helps when you're trying to move the studs back and forth. We'll go ahead and get these slid in the track. Now, same as the ceiling track, The first and last L bracket you're going to want obviously facing into the track so they're not butting into the wall. We'll go ahead and place our track on our pre-marked layout lines. Okay, so when attaching your floor track to the floor, you're going to want to use the type of anchor that's going to be appropriate for the type of floor you're working with. Typically with concrete, we're using a Tapcon screw. A wood floor, you're going to use like a wood screw. When you're attaching, you're going to want to go ahead and run to that same center groove as you did for the ceiling track. You're going to want to run these screws every 4 to 6 feet. With the floor and ceiling track installed, we can now measure for our vertical flex studs. When measuring for vertical flex studs, you want to measure from floor to ceiling and subtract 1.5 inches from that measurement. This measurement allows for the studs to be properly installed in both the floor and the ceiling track. We'll go ahead and get our measurement and we'll get our studs cut. Okay, with our flex studs cut, we can go ahead and get them installed. What you want to do is you're going to want to slide it up into the ceiling track and slide it into the floor track. You'll notice that the studs will have a little bit of play in them. That's exactly what we want. Those studs are actually going to float a little bit, which gives us the ability to move them back and forth when it's time to adjust them for the panels. So we're going to go ahead and get the flex studs attached to the L brackets. The L brackets will slide into the center of that flex stud. Again, we want to pick that up slightly off the bottom of the track so it's not resting. And we'll go ahead and use our 3/4 inch framing screws that were supplied with the product to attach the L brackets to the studs. Okay, we always run 2 of the 3/4 inch screws into the L brackets. There are holes on the L brackets, so we'll hit the top one, we'll skip a hole, and we'll hit the next hole. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the floor. With our flex series, you're always going to have a flex stud attaching to an existing wall. When you're attaching to an existing wall, you can use a self-tapper screw into solid blocking, a wood screw into some solid blocking, or if you have any blocking, you can also use a drywall toggle. Those seem to work really well. So we're going to go ahead and put your flex stud in. You're going to go into the ceiling track again and into the floor track. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our L bracket attached to that stud. You're going to go ahead and hold it up like we did on the studs in the center. Attaching this stud to the wall, when you don't have any kind of door opening, you can go ahead and follow the contour of that wall. You're going to be able to cut drywall panels with the contour of that wall. If we have some glass panels, we can look into possibly having those glass panels cut to fit against that existing wall. But you're going to want a nice tight fit between the wall and the stud. So we're going to go ahead and get our stud attached using our anchors. I went ahead and installed the last 2 vertical studs on this wall, and now we can look at installing our horizontal studs. Before installing your horizontal studs, you're going to want to make sure your vertical studs are spaced properly and you have the set screws tight so they cannot go anywhere. I'll do a separate video on stud spacing, and we'll go ahead and get started on our horizontal studs. When measuring for horizontal studs, what you're going to want to do is measure from this edge of the flex stud to the same edge on the opposite stud. That's going to be your measurement for those flex studs. Now you can actually cut these about 1/4 inch short, so you have a little bit of play back and forth. And so we'll go ahead and take our measurement, we'll get our flex stud cut. With our horizontal stud prepped, we can go ahead and get it installed. You're going to want to reference your drawing for the approximate height of those horizontal studs. If you have a non-full height door, we're typically going to follow that horizontal stud above the door. We'll go over the stud height and location for standard height doors in a separate video. So we're going to go ahead and get this one installed. Typically, the L brackets can be up or down. It's just a personal preference. So what you want to do is you're going to slide the leg of the L bracket into the vertical stud. Um, and I'll usually get the other side started. It helps hold that stud in place. And we'll go ahead and we're going to use our 3/4 inch framing screws to attach the L bracket to the stud. One side attached, we're going to want to go ahead and get the other side attached. To do this, we just use a torpedo level to level the horizontal stud. With the horizontal stud level, we'll go ahead and get it attached to the other vertical stud. With the horizontal stud installed, we're going to move on to the next horizontal stud and the other opening. When you have horizontal studs continuing across the opening, what you can do is you can use the screws coming through from the other L bracket as an alignment tool for the next horizontal stud. So what you'll do is you'll take your horizontal stud, you'll align the holes with the screws coming through, and then from there, you're going to use the open holes to attach the L bracket. With this L bracket attached, you can go ahead and use your level and attach the other L bracket. Continue that process for all of your horizontal studs. Something you'll want to do once you have all your horizontal studs in place is you're going to go through and tighten the set screws. Now, this is going to be related to your vertical stud spacing. So once you have all those spaced out properly, come through, tighten all those set screws down, and it'll lock everything in place. This will complete the video of our basic framing of our Flex series. If you have any questions, please contact our office.